The Blue Cliff Record, Case 82. What is the indestructible Dharma body? Engo's introduction. The fishing line at the end of the rod. Only those with eyes can know. The device beyond convention. Only the enlightened will discern. What is the fishing line? What is the device beyond convention? See the following. Main subject. A monk asked Teisho, the physical body decomposes. What is the indestructible Dharma body? Teisho said, flowers cover the hillside like brocade. The valley streams brim blue as indigo. Sesshin's verse. The question betrays ignorance. The answer is not understood. The moon is cold. The wind is strong. The wintry pine stands on the ancient cliff. How delightful it is to meet a person of the way on the road who uses neither speech nor silence. A crystal whip is used to smash the black pearl, lest its faults increase. The nation has a code of laws with 3,000 kinds of offenses. You may turn this way if you would like. Second day of our winter session. And today we celebrated Hoenji Day, the 18th. When we can gather this way at Sesshin, to do so means so much. Our opening here at Seneca Turnpike and Onondaga Creek came about on October 18th, 1996. But our temple goes back a long way before we came here. How did you feel chanting that mystic Dharani? As some of you know, we've been studying the Shurangama Sutra. And what we chant when we do Ryogonshu is the mystic formula, the esoteric teaching of that sutra. So it confers a very powerful effect on your life. At the time you were chanting, you may have thought, oh, I can't keep up. What are they doing here? Why are we doing what? This is ridiculous. Anybody feel that way? Yeah, some did, some did. And others. If you've been to Sesshin in the spring at Daibusatsu, it's done every day. If you've been there on Daibusatsu Day, also. So we finally have been able to incorporate it here. And you're all the beneficiaries. You may not think, oh, I'm gaining merit. That's good. Don't think that way. But you are. You are chanting this. Even you were not able to be here this morning. You still felt it. This is what we mean by something that is beyond logical comprehension. This, sometimes it's called esoteric. And the second day of Sesshin, what is quite natural? Discomfort. What else?
Delirium.
Oh, I have to give the talk. You can have a nap, though. The thing about sleepiness in Sesshin is that we think it's wrong. It's like everything else, whatever arises. I'm embarrassed. I can't, what if I fall over? So that's a really important thing, okay? You wake up. Of course, we don't want you to indulge in sleepiness and just say, the hell with it, I'm going to sleep through this sitting because it won't hurt as much. No, but when you fall asleep, when you don't struggle and you don't fight and you don't think it's wrong and you don't blame yourself, then what? As Rinzai said, when tired, sleep. When hungry, eat. So, this is one way to wake up, right? You find yourself nodding off. How marvelous. That is, by the way, something you don't normally appreciate. It's the opening of a door. So we must love our temporary falling into whatever we want to call it, some sort of blurred state, because we notice it. And by noticing it, instead of thinking, oh, we're bad Zen students, we realize, wow, I'm awake. Oh, look. Look at this room. Oh, wow. It never was shining so brightly before. So anyway, I have to say this over and over again because we're all so quick to blame ourselves. I have to say, appreciate whatever is happening. And try to be present for it, even if it means coming from absence. Absence, presence, not two. Huh? Appreciate this. Appreciate your life, all of it, not just the parts you think are correct. When you put that on it, it's no longer your life. It's somebody else's idea of your life. Brainwashed. So, Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. was born, as I said, on January 15th, 1929. And was assassinated on April 4th, 1968. So how old was he? 39. So you're going to make a good treasurer. Someone who can subtract is wonderful. His physical body decomposed this koan today. Yet, the intensity of his faith, his vow, is indestructible. We feel it. In the 11-year period between 1957 and 1968, King traveled over 6 million miles and spoke more than 2,500 times on behalf of us all. Of course, civil rights, social justice, those living in poverty, and to end the war in Vietnam. He was 35 when he received the Nobel Peace Prize, the youngest person ever to receive it. So it's quite the irony that Dr. Martin Luther King Jr.'s national holiday, the Monday after his birthday, is the same day as the unmentionable. Wow, what different worldviews. Maryland Representative Kwesi Mfume wrote, "As I reflect back on the life of Dr. King, I am reminded of a man who was unawed by opinion, unseduced by flattery, and undismayed by disaster. He confronted life with the courage of his convictions and then confronted death with the courage of his faith." Fittingly, Martin Luther King Jr. Day was designed so as to intentionally inspire all Americans to volunteer and give back to their communities. In fact, it is the only federal holiday classified as a national day of service. I look forward to honoring his memory by continuing this tradition of service this year on January 20th. I will be spending it serving meals and volunteering at Baltimore's Our Daily Bread Employment Center and visiting with veterans at the Maryland Center for Veterans Education and Training. Then I will join hundreds of community residents to march in the city's annual MLK Day parade. Teaching by example is how all of us can find a way to give back. I will not be in attendance at the inauguration ceremony of President-elect Donald Trump, as they both fall on the same day. We are aware that we've been living through a period of widespread antagonism and disinformation, a polite word for lies. And we've seen what it does to our nation, to the world. And we've felt what it can do to ourselves, to each other. Martin Luther King said, like an unchecked cancer, hate corrodes the personality and eats away its vital unity. Hate destroys a man's sense of values and his objectivity. It causes him to describe the beautiful as ugly and the ugly as beautiful, and to confuse the true with the false and the false with the true. And with the year of the snake beginning January 29th, just 9 days after the inauguration, it's helpful, I think, to remember what he said back in 1963. Martin Luther King said, "We must combine the toughness of the serpent and the softness of the dove, a tough mind and a tender heart." For those of us of a certain age, not too many, Martin Luther King's vision and ardent activism permeated our lives. In the spring of 1962, my first year at Vassar, I went on a freedom ride organized by the Reverend William Sloane Coffin, who was the chaplain of Yale University. We took a bus, about 7 or 8 of us crammed into a VW bus from Yale to the eastern shore of Maryland, which was a pretty rough place. Not all that different from Alabama or Mississippi. And we went with the plan that we would desegregate a lunch counter. After we were thrown out, we walked. Some of us white, some of us black, hand in hand, in a circle in front of the diner. And local folks threw stones. But we were lucky, we weren't arrested. That night, we got back in the bus and went to New Haven, and Reverend Coffins said, "You can sleep in the church." I woke up on a very hard pew to the sight of people in all their Easter finery coming in for Easter service. Resurrection. Then what? The following year, I went to the March on Washington. The March on Washington for Jobs and Freedom. August 28th, 1963. And we were told, about 250,000 of us. You really couldn't see anything except this sea of people. Far, far, far down, there was some stage and the Washington Monument. And if you were lucky, you could clamber on top of something, but you could hear and you could feel, and it was so amazing. Everybody was singing, not just the people on the stage, all the freedom songs. We shall overcome. And on stage, Joan Baez. Oh, freedom. And Odetta. I'm on my way. And Dylan, his song just came out on the death of Medgar Evers. But especially I felt this one, which is kind of an anthem for us in this room. You probably remember, some of you. You can sing it with me. We shall not be moved. We shall not be moved. Just like a tree planted by the water. We shall not be moved. Sometimes I feel as though we ought to have some glue here, so that when you sit down, that's it. You ain't going nowhere. So just sing that song the next time you think you have to go somewhere. I shall not be moved. Right? It's very helpful. This is our practice. This is it. Many of you, of course, were born after 1963. How many? Maybe half?
2003.
Ah. Yeah. But still, probably because of wherever you went to school or it's in the public eye, you heard kings I have a dream, right? You heard that amazing speech. How many of you have managed to live this long without having heard it? Anybody? Maybe Hema. In India, did you hear it?
Yes.
You did, even there, in school? So wonderful. This Dr. King, everywhere. And I'm sure that you have heard of or read about the 3 marches that he led for voting rights from Selma to Montgomery, Alabama. Maybe you saw the 2014 film, Selma. Anybody who has not, oh, please arrange. The footage of the brutality that he and marchers faced. Knocked down by fire hoses, beaten, jailed. And some of you have read King's letter written from jail in Birmingham, Alabama. Extraordinary. You might say, oh, that's old history. That's this is the most important thing to know, to feel, to build upon, to live your lives inspired by. No, it's not ancient history. We talk about all these old Zen masters. They come alive when we work together on the koans. They're right here. Martin Luther King. He is an ancestor. American ancestor. And in addition to watching Selma, if you can, get hold of the 3 volumes by Taylor Branch. He won the Pulitzer Prize for it. An amazing 3-volume set called America in the King Years. It's really something. Taylor Branch wrote about King. Nonviolence had come over him for a purpose that far transcended segregation. It touched evils beyond color and addressed needs more human than status or possessions. Having lifted him up among rulers, it would drive him back down to die among garbage workers in Memphis. So probably you know that he went to Memphis, Tennessee to support the sanitation workers in their strike for fair wages and safe working conditions after 2 men were crushed to death by a malfunctioning garbage truck. And he spoke to an enormous crowd at the Mason Temple in Memphis, Pentecostal church. It was the largest meeting place for Black people in the South. And 10 years 10 days later, he returned to lead a march. Thousands participated, but to King's dismay, it ended with looting, mass arrests, hospitalizations, and a 16-year-old shot to death by a policeman. So then he went to Atlanta on the morning of April 3rd, spoke there. That night, he went back to Memphis. Tornadoes were touching down all around. And he spoke again at the Mason Temple. And I just find that speech so incredible. I have to share it with you. Do you mind? I mean, it's not the whole speech, but he said, April 3rd, we've got some difficult days ahead, but it doesn't matter with me now because I've been to the mountaintop. Like anybody, I would like to live a long life, but I'm not concerned about that now. I just want to do God's will, and He's allowed me to go up the mountain. And I've looked over, and I have seen the promised land. And I may not get there with you, but I want you to know tonight that we as a people will get to the promised land. So I'm happy tonight. I'm not worried about anything. I'm not fearing any man. Mine eyes have seen the glory of the coming of the Lord. Those were his last public words. The next day, looking over a hotel balcony as friends were gathering for a dinner, soul food, he was shot. Martin Luther King gave his life to his conviction that all beings deserve justice and that the only way to bring it about is to shine the light of freedom, to embody love. And he said, darkness cannot drive out darkness. Only light can do that. Hate cannot drive out hate. Only love can do that. Or as the Buddha said in the Dhammapada, hatred can never put an end to hatred. Love alone can. This is an unalterable law. People forget that their lives will end soon. For those who remember, quarrels come to an end. We know, yes? We know this. Well, in today's koan, you thought I would never get there. I've been there. We've all been there. A monk wants to know, what happens after my physical body is gone? When my life ends, will my Dharma body remain? Perhaps some of you have wondered too, what happens? What remains of the person who has passed away? Is it more than memories? Is there a spirit that lives on? And where has that person gone? King said, to Promised Land. In Pure Land Buddhism, it's believed that our good acts in this lifetime will bring us into the Pure Land in our next incarnation. Where is that Pure Land? Hakuin ends the Song of Zazen, which we recited yesterday. Remember? This very place. This very body is the body of the Buddha. And Hakuin's disciple, Torei Enji, ends Bodhisattva's vow. Then, in each moment's flash of our thought, there will grow a lotus flower, and each lotus flower will reveal a Buddha. These Buddhas will glorify Sukhavati, the Pure Land, every moment, everywhere. So in Buddha's teachings, there are two bodies. This physical one that had a beginning, that took form, and therefore will have an ending and will vanish back into the formless realm. And the other body is a Dharma body that has no beginning, no end. That is the form of no form, no time. Always just this moment. And is not subject to convention. So are they one or are they two? Dharma body, this physical body. I remember when I was helping Ada Roshi with some correspondence, and he was writing to another Roshi, and he ended, "I hope your two bodies are doing well." But this monk who goes to Tairyu Zenji has some concept of before and after. Tairyu, actually, we know very little about. So today, instead of talking about the Zen ancestor, I talked about Martin Luther King. Yes? Are they one or are they two? Oh, that happened long ago in another country. Yeah. So all we know about Tairyu is that he was in Tokusan's lineage. So right from the beginning, this monk asking about the indestructible Dharma body is doomed. As Engo says in his introduction, only those with eyes to see can know. Only if you have clear insight can the question even be asked. The fishing line that Engo speaks of at the end of the rod, this is Tairyu. Probing with the rod, how deep is this monk? Pretty shallow. Hooking him with what Engo calls the device beyond convention. When we're stuck in dualistic thinking, then no matter what the question, it betrays that, right? And no answer, no device that lies beyond convention, no teaching that manifests original freedom, like Tairyu's poetic response, can penetrate your bumpkin mind. Ask away. I'll answer away. Okay. Yeah, I guess. Yeah. But anyway, the monk is seeking an explanation from Tairyu. What happens after I disintegrate? Can I count on an indestructible Dharma body? There's another koan, case 29 of the Blue Cliff record, where the monk asks Daizui, when the cup of fire flares up and the great cosmos is destroyed, will it be destroyed or not? Daizui says, it will be destroyed. Incredulous, the monk asks again. Maybe he didn't really understand my question. Will it be gone with the other? Daizui said, it will be gone with the other. So Tairyu's response, his verse, flowers cover the hillside like brocade. The valley streams brim blue as indigo. Very beautiful, right? And yet it's just as uncompromising, refusing any such thing as an explanation, a definition. He's letting go in this verse, giving himself away. And Secho's verse to this koan is holding fast. The question betrays ignorance. The answer is not understood. The moon is cold. The wind is strong. The wintry pine stands on the ancient cliff. So both are this direct, unmediated experience. And this kind of experience is what we mean by unconventional reality. The reality of our very lives. Each of the 10,000 things is nothing but suchness itself. Suchness manifests as each. As Doshin said in his wonderful talk yesterday, as you. No one's left out. And it's simultaneous. We might say, to be and not to be. No birth and death, and no end to birth and death, as the Heart Sutra puts it. No passing away or coming into existence, as we heard Subhuti say today. There have been quite a few Sangha losses over the past year or so. Sangha members, mothers, brothers, other family members, friends. Saiho, Damien Kick's mother. Kyosho, Richard Masson had planned to be here with us at this session, but his mother died on January 8th, my son's birthday. Birth, death. And just this past Monday, January 13th, I got the call that Sesshin, Ko, and Richard Rudin had died. One of the most long-time Zen Studies Society members, as Doshin said. He was more than a friend, more than a student, We had a relationship beyond calculation, inconceivable. Now we know, even though we don't want to know, that our physical forms are temporary. One of the key teachings of the Buddha, right? Impermanence. Nothing stays the same except your pain. Nothing has any inherent, unchanging reality. The law of impermanence, as Teisho speaks of the code of laws, the law of impermanence is one we all must obey. And until we fully comply with that law, with absolute comprehension, we will continue to rail against it and create what? Oh, dukkha, oh, dukkha, oh, dukkha over me. Never be free. So, adding a thing to no thingness, willing circumstances to be different from what they are. Surefire recipe for misery, right? We all know that recipe. To live, however, in accordance with the law of impermanence doesn't mean we don't feel emotions. Somehow people get this idea, I shouldn't feel this way. You shouldn't? Why not? You feel it. Oh, but it's not real. Emotions aren't real. I read that somewhere. Doesn't mean we don't feel emotions to live in accordance with the law of impermanence. We grieve when we lose the loved one, yes? A family member, a student, a friend. In the last Dharma study, someone referred to that story about a Zen master's beloved disciple who had died, and the master was crying. And someone said, "You're an enlightened Zen master. How come you're crying?" And he said, "I'm crying because I'm sad." So we don't pretend. We don't stuff our emotions or think they're wrong. We just feel them completely. Become one with them. At the same time, don't make the mistake of thinking that they have some unchanging essence. Some of you know the koan about Tozan. A monk asks Tozan, "How can we avoid cold and heat?" Tozan answers, "Why don't you go to where there is no cold or heat?" The monk wants to know, "Where?" Tozan says, When cold, let it be so cold it kills you. When hot, let it be so hot, kills you. Of course, there is no you and no intrinsic reality called cold or heat, right? We're here to cut through that relative self that identifies with preferential mind, or that likes its misery. I'm used to it. I know misery. Nobody can take it away from me. The conditional mind, a little more of this, a little less of that. So these emotions, these conditions are passing. They have no fixed reality. When we realize the fundamental shunyata of all phenomena, then forms come, forms go, and we don't get stuck. Just this purity of feeling, letting it kill so-called self, acknowledging, yeah, I'm pretty sad, and letting it go. Then we can realize the birthlessness, deathlessness of life. Sesshin knew this. He knew it profoundly. We met each other more than 50 years ago. We sat together at New York Zendo. We did many Sesshin there and at Daibusatsu Zendo. Secho quotes, "To meet a person of the way on the road who uses neither speech nor silence." This is a koan. And Sesshin was a true person of the way. One who used neither speech nor silence. All through the decades, he'd call me every year on my birthday, on the Buddha's birthday, on the Buddha's Enlightenment Day, many such occasions. Whether I was at Daibusatsu or here in my home, and nothing needed to be said. There were often just silent tears of gratitude for this intimate connection. We met after he came back from Vietnam. He was a medic in the Navy and the Marine Corps, and then was posted in Japan and Okinawa. And then following up on his early studies at Hobart and Bard, now he had become a student at Manhattan College. And he came to New York Zendo through an assignment for a class, excuse me, a class in ethics and religious studies. He went to New York Zendo and found himself sitting next to Edo Roshi, at the time called Teisho. And then he came up to Daibusatsu Zendo when I was living there and construction was just starting on the monastery. He sat with us in the old Zendo upstairs in the Beecher house. And then he decided to go to Case Western University Dental School in Cleveland, Ohio. Having literally dodged bullets in Vietnam, he was nearly killed in a car accident in Cleveland in 1974 on his first day of school. He was in the hospital there for a year and a half. Many, many surgeries. As Doshin said, Edo Roshi went to visit. My first husband and I went to visit him there too. And even though the accident had left him maimed, affecting his hearing, his walking, he went on to complete his training as a dentist. He got work, married, had 2 wonderful children, and attended Sesshin at New York Zendo and Daibusatsu Zendo whenever he could, and visited here one snowy weekend. Besides Jikyo, I don't know if anyone else was here then. When I was working on the book Eloquent Silence, bringing together the teachings of Nyogen Senzaki, and I needed to go out to California to meet with Duncan McCandless, who was the son of Nyogen Senzaki's disciple, Ruth Strout McCandless, to look over the materials that had been in her collection that Duncan now had. So I flew out there, and Sesshin met me at the airport and drove me around various places, and we spent time looking over all the photographs, manuscripts, the monastic attire, his kesa, robe, and scanned photographs for the book. Sesshin had received lay ordination many years ago from Edo Roshi, but he longed to be fully ordained. But due to his family responsibilities and continuing physical difficulties, it seemed impossible to take on that traditional 1,000-day monastic training. The longing persisted even as his physical condition worsened, and he had to move to an assisted living place in California. Andy and I visited him there in 2019. The body was disintegrating, but the mind was was clear and at peace. That simultaneous two bodies. And at last, in 2021, with the readiness of time, and thanks to the technology that we began using because of the pandemic, I ordained him on Zoom, right here, connecting from Hoenji to his tiny room in California. Anjan spent time on the phone with him, interviewing him. And he told her, "This room is my zendo. It's my monk's quarters. Shinge Roshi understands." Before his ordination, he said, "This practice, the best way I can sum it up for myself is, it's something that you can't explain. It makes you cry deep inside your heart. And you start to feel how fortunate, how blessed you were having the chance to even touch the surface of what we have. Not the performing of rituals and memorizing sutras, all that too, but something you can't explain, and you don't try to explain. Something that you feel so deep inside. It has no bottom. It has no beginning. It has no end. Namu Zenshin Ko-en Richard Wooden.